And we're going to talk about what's new in AutoCAD 2026. And there's a number of features here. Um, the big thing really is the software is way faster. When you go to open drawings, and even especially over your network, they open much faster than any previous version of AutoCAD. And Autodesk's specification, as you see there, is drawings open up to 11 times faster. They also save faster. If you're using a number of the different vertical products, vertical tool sets like Civil 3D is a vertical product that runs on top of AutoCAD. They've increased speed there a great deal, where things like uh, if you're regenerating contours on a very, very large tin surface, that happens much faster. Okay. So lots of things to do with speed. Next one is this search and convert, or what's the B search command. Now this has been enhanced in this version of AutoCAD. I want to show you some of what this can do. I mentioned Civil 3D because that's really my background, is in Civil 3D and the old land desktop and et cetera. And one of the things that would come in for a support type question that I'd get is, well, the surveyor sent me this drawing and it looks like there's points, but it's just lines and text. I don't know what I can do with that. Well, maybe back in the day you couldn't do really anything with it, but now if I go to insert and do the search and convert, what I can do is I can say, okay, AutoCAD, look for those two lines and a piece of text next to it throughout the drawing. And it finds all occurrences of that combination of objects. Okay. And then I can go to the different, there's one. When I'm ready to go, I say, yeah, let's convert. Okay. Do I want to include the text variations? Because what this is going to let me do is this is going to let me turn those texts into attributes. So I, for example, could say this is the elevation for this, well, the attribute would say the elevation. So I'm going to call this block point. Okay, what's the base point? I'm going to pick the base point and say the intersection of the lines. That would be typical of a survey point, right? Okay, that's the name, that's the insertion point. Assign a layer. I know how to use a mouse. I just can't always do it well. I'm going to go here and say convert, and it converts all of those then into blocks. So there's a block. See the attribute comes up. So that's elevation. If I did a rename that attribute, let's see, do a Batman, block attribute manager. You can change that. I think I can change that. Tag to elevation. That way it's going to make more sense to me as an engineer or surveyor dealing with this. Okay, so and then that has, shouldn't say tag O, it should say elevation. I'm not sure why that's happening. Well, we'll continue. Okay, so if I had other items here that I need to convert, like here's some thing, should be a block, but it's lines and a little hatch, I think. Well, we can do our search and convert. Now, I haven't yet shown you search and or detect and convert. Search and convert requires that I pick what to search for. Then AutoCAD really doesn't have much trouble going through and saying, okay, yeah, I found all these instances of that combination of items. What do you want to do? Let's convert, make a new block. It'll be called what? I'll use geometry center in this case. Okay, so I don't have to go pick an insertion point. Don't care about text variations because I don't have any text in this. I could pick whatever layer and say convert. Now I have these blocks. This one's a little more complicated. It has a couple of circles and then a bunch of little sub blocks that go around. So let's try that. Ah, that's a little more difficult. I'm going to try it from a zoomed out further. And maybe because it has sub blocks in it or something, but let me try this. Yep, doesn't like it. Okay, what I need to do then is explode all of these. Okay, now I can do a search and convert. I think, is that a, yeah, now I'm down to lines, arcs, circles. Search and convert these. Now it finds them. So because there were blocks in that circle, I exploded those, then it found these blocks and I could do my conversion now. Block name, ring. Geometry center's fine. And pick some random layer, stairs, convert. Okay. Now this detect and convert, it's a little bit different beast. It's meant to do the same thing, but you don't have to pick the instances of objects for it to search for. So like how I went in and I picked this couple circles and all those nuts there, and then it was able to find them in the drawing pretty easily. Well, the detect and convert has to be able to figure out what to search for. So it's like it finds this configuration of objects and then sees if there's others in the drawing that it could use like that. This is what they call a preview software. So it's not really ready for prime time, and they have stated that it does best in finding architectural type objects. So like, toilets and doors, should find those fairly readily, but many other objects it won't. And they're telling us here, it didn't work. We're constantly improving our detection capability. We encourage you to keep testing the feature. If I went to search and convert, then I can do the thing where I pick the objects, etc. So that's a command that really I could have used about 20 years ago, a whole bunch of times. But you may run into that situation. You get drawings from the outside of your company. In your company, all your CAD operators know how to do these things and use blocks. But in other companies, that's not always the case, right? Okay, move on to new feature, connected support files. What this does is this lets you, if you use Autodesk Docs to collaborate your drawing projects with others, then you can specify project-based support files. So for example, let me get a drawing that's if I go to options now in a ACC project-based drawing. Notice here on my Files tab some differences. Current drawing is using project-aware settings. What are those project settings? Well, support file search path, what they've done is they've added the ability to put a cloud-based or cloud project-based support file path. And then you put your support files into that location. And your support files are going to include CTB files, for example, right? So if you send, someone uses your drawing and has a certain CTB that they need, it's going to be in this location in the project. It'll come up as available to them. That can include template files, and that's a really nice way of enforcing templates onto a project, is put them here in the project support file search path, okay? And as part of the template, where they're going to go is one thing, but then also I can force what drawing is used when the user picks QNew. What's the default template? And this can be a project-based template, something for that particular project if I want. Hopefully I do want to, because that's efficient. And then you'll see there's also my settings. For this particular user, you can do specific settings, which I have none for me. And then I have my classic AutoCAD settings, the support file search paths that I'm used to setting. Okay. And I can still work with AutoCAD this way, of course. I still need to, but when I'm doing the cloud-based, then I have the added advantage of being able to put support files into the cloud, so I'm not having to attach CTB files to emails or etc. You know what I'm talking about, having to send all these support files. Same thing you do like now, your disk-based drawings, you probably use e-transmit to send them, and that bundles up those support files. Well, in this case, we're not having to use e-transmit because people can just log into the project and open the file and go, right? And they're going to have the support files. Now I'll show you in my Autodesk Docs area. Here's my project. So within the project files for AutoCAD 2026 demonstration, you'll see it has this special folder called Autodesk.support. In that that's where I want to put any support files. So for example, I opened a drawing and I set it to, I made my own special CTB plot style table in that drawing and added that drawing to the cloud project. Well, AutoCAD automatically added this Tim's CTB into the Autodesk support folder for that project. So if someone else was to open that drawing, calling for that file, it'll be there and it'll open for them, and they won't have to go call me and ask for it or etc. So this is a great feature if you're using Autodesk Docs for collaboration. And this is another reason why Autodesk Docs is probably better for you than something like, what's that one they call? Big Docs or whatever. Microsoft Docs and all those others. Autodesk Docs is meant specifically for Autodesk projects, AutoCAD files, etc. And that's why you see this sort of Autodesk support coming in. Okay, so that's connected support files. There's enhancements. This is not new, but enhancements to the markup import and markup assist. Okay, so now you can use Autodesk Docs, import your PDF markups directly to AutoCAD. So you could, if you've added markups to PDFs, those can be loaded into AutoCAD and treated like DWF markups etc. Okay, notice here they go to what's called a trace layer. This is the markups layer that AutoCAD uses. So if you're wanting to do AutoCAD based markup editing and I forget, keeping track of them, you want to learn about trace, and that's got its own dialog in AutoCAD. Okay, so then it opens up this special window, and anything that you do really is a markup. It's separate from the drawing file. And I want a rev cloud, REV, rev cloud. And then I go back to the drawing. I can see the trace, okay? But I can't edit those items unless I go back to trace, and then I can edit those. So the trace is like a markup object, in effect. I can put it on a specific layer. It's going to 0 here. I think I can put it on whatever my current layer was. So if I'd have created a new layer called trace, okay. Here's some graphics. So transparency of the overlay, transparency of the geometry in the trace, and you can see how it gets lighter or heavier. Okay. Okay, that is markup, assist. There's some new items here in what they call activity insights. And this is something that with AutoCAD now, it keeps track of edits that you've done in the drawing and when the drawing's been edited by whom or by who, I guess. Yeah. So let's go. I'm going to go Activity Insight Open, and I get this dialog. So it shows me this drawing, what's happened today. It was opened. Here's version 2. Let's compare. And no difference. I can continue safely. It was saved, it was opened, it was detached from a different drawing. Also on Monday, there's a different version of it. I could compare to that. No difference there either. Okay, this one's got a little more history to it. Okay, it's been saved and opened, saved to a new name, saved to a new name a couple times. That means I crashed AutoCAD. Here's a version 2, let's compare. Okay, so this shows me what's only in the current drawing. Or, okay, what's only in the current drawing is in green. What's not in the current drawing is in red. And so you can see I went along and basically rotated some items, right? You can see here the orange, these are the clouds, the revision clouds that it automatically added, put around these changes, these differences for me to highlight those for me. That happens automatically. If I do polygonal, you see it tries to zig and zag in and out more closely. This is the size of the arcs in the cloud. Okay. I'm going to import all differences. I think I can just do that. No? Guess that doesn't work. That exports a snapshot. Makes a new drawing file. Okay. There's some few other things I've done with this. Publish, publish, publish. Here's another compare. Here's version 1. Never know if I clicked it right, if it's going to open or not. There we go. Yeah, that's basically the same sort of differences. Okay, so that's your activity insights. Also, you have what they call Esri maps. Bear with me a sec. I'm going to open Civil 3D to show this. So Autodesk for several years now has had Microsoft Bing maps as that you could put as a backdrop to AutoCAD. Well, now you can do that with Esri maps as well. If you're familiar with Esri, Environmental Systems Research Institute out of Redlands, California, they're a big GIS software firm. ArcView, ArcGIS, those are pretty big names in that industry. And so they have live maps the same as Bing does, and you can use those as a backdrop to AutoCAD now. I don't need that on. I'm going to say, let's do Esri OpenStreetMap, and this will have a certain look to it. Then I'll do the imagery. So this is aerial photo images. Regular Esri streets. Then they got these light gray and dark gray that are interesting. The dark gray, I can't even see anything, but I'll show it to you anyway. That is indeed dark. Yep. Okay, and you still have your Bing maps as well. You know, there's some people that say they like the Bing maps better. Others say they like the Esri better. The fact is, Autodesk has given you a choice now on which one to use. Don't need that. Back to AutoCAD. And there are a number of new commands, and I want to show you where you find in the AutoCAD help system, where you'll find new commands, new features, etc. If you go to AutoCAD help, right here, you're going to see what's new. But if you scroll down, you're going to see this, new AutoCAD commands and system variables reference. If you're a CAD manager, you're going to want to take a look at this because there might be some new variables down a little bit here. These are the new commands. Has to do with all the block detect stuff. This deal here, image sync weight, has to do with now AutoCAD will load raster images in the background as the drawing is loading. So it's kind of like doing it simultaneously. That's because of multitasking in your computer system. But anyway, you can tell it, if you turn that on, then if the drawing finishes before the raster image is still being loaded, then the drawing will wait for the image to finish loading. Now, I don't really know the consequences of doing it one way or the other, but there must be. But if you're a CAD manager, that's something I think you probably want to look at and know about. And then you see here's a whole bunch of different. This controls whether or not it does the asynchronous load in the background during the opening of a drawing file. So whether that new function feature is even enabled is called image async. And we're getting into other versions. So that's it. That's those things. And I'll close that. That's about what I had to say today. So thank you very much for attending. If anyone had any questions, I'm happy to entertain those.